Okay. Right. I'd like to welcome everyone here this afternoon for the Risk and Audit Committee meeting. Welcome to councillors, staff, Alan, and anyone that's watching online today. So we'll get underway. Firstly, I'll call for any apologies. And so far, I have got Deputy Mayor Basher, Councillor Sampson. So we've got Councillor Webb with us, so that's good. Is Ned an apology? Apology for Ned Parfrey and the Mayor.
I will give about 3 minutes to continue council function out of this board.
Okay, duly noted. Thank you. We'll note it in the minutes when you depart from the meeting. So with those apologies, could I have someone move that they be accepted? Councillor Weston, seconded. Councillor Howard, all in favour? Any against? No, carried unanimously, thank you. Next item is members' interests. Does any councillor have any interest to declare in any of today's agenda items? Okay, so I'll move that no members' interests are declared. Over to seconder, please. Seconded, Councillor Grafton, all in favour? Aye. Any opposed? Carried unanimously, thank you. Moving on now to the confirmation of the minutes of the 11th of October. Okay, and I'm going to take these as read. Are there any amendments to these minutes? No, no amendments. Oh, Councillor Howard?
Not amendments, but there's just a little bit about from Penny Bicknell about some cost incurred that she would check and clarify next month. It's 2 items, one on page 14, one on page 15, just with one noted, please.
Okay, I'll refer to, I'll ask Douglas just to check those out while we're doing the minutes. Councillor Reedy? Yes.
Same page 14, action points, item 4220, strategic risk register to come back in November.
So in the action plan, duly noted, thank you, in the action plan list, we've got a note about that coming forward to when the risk register is going to, that might just be a date anomaly there, so I'll also get Douglas to check that out while we're just looking at the minutes. Can you just check when we've got the risk register coming back to us, Douglas? So we've got those 2 things we're getting checked at the moment. Subject to all those, would somebody like to move that the resolution Risk and Audit Committee receive and confirm the minutes from the 11th of October 2023? Councillor O'Keefe, seconded. Councillor Grafton, all in favour? Any against? No, it's carried unanimously. Thank you, and I'll refer back to Douglas now.
Thank you, Chair. With regard to those 2 PIP report items, I know Mrs. Bicknell did make a note to the PIP meeting on Monday, noting the corrections, but I can't recall exactly what she said. So what I'll do, I'll find and I'll just circulate something over the next day or 2 that will formally report on that issue when those minutes come to us, but I'll just give you an early heads up on what that was.
Okay.
With regard to the strategic risk register, so I have it, unfortunately, Mr. Rossler's just been unavailable to really sit down and just try and work out a work plan with them. It's one of those type of activities that, for 2 reasons, I'm not, I don't have a lot of in-depth experience in risk register preparation, but I also think Phil's right over this type of work. I think it's also good having that independence to do the risk register review. So Mr. Rossler is the right person to do it. So look, we'll endeavour, when I know he's out of the country at the moment, endeavour when he's back just to try and get him pinned down so we get it sorted out in the new year, and then we can do our review. So I don't think much will happen before Christmas, because we also have other reviews and work that are undertaken at the moment where we need to allocate our staff time too. So I apologise for that.
Councillor Reedy, it is coming up in the action points for us to discuss in the next item, so perhaps we'll have that discussion around date at that point. Are you okay with that? Thank you. Okay, Okay, so moving on then to agenda item number 4, which is the action point report. And so there are the 2 items. One is around the pump stations, which we've highlighted there to come as an action point, be transferred to the strategic risk register once that review has been done. Now, you've put March 2024 there, Sue, would you like to talk to that?
Yeah, so there'll be 2 parts to it. We'll need to run workshops at a couple of levels. One is with staff to go through risks, and then obviously with yourselves to run through the list and the updated risk register so that you can have that process. So I would be thinking that'll be sort of a February exercise for both parties, and we'd hope to have that first draft of the risk register update with you by March to risk and audit. So that's our expectation at this time. I appreciate it's not moved as quickly as we had hoped in terms of the work plan.
So perhaps could we completed in early 2024?
Yeah, if you want to, if we can read that.
Well, we've got that in there. Are you, Councillor Reid, anything to add to that?
A little bit concerned, Madam Chair. The reason being is that this group is committee is risk and audit. And I know there's been issues with staffing and what have you, but risk is one of the integral components of this meeting, of this group. Now, we haven't seen a report for a little while, and I'm a little bit concerned, that's all. But I also take on board the fact that many other councils only meet 4 times a year, i.e. quarterly, so therefore we're probably within range. But it concerns me that we just seem to be pushing off. I appreciate that Douglas is saying in terms of getting someone who's more expertise in that area, but it's as a bit of a concern.
I think your concerns are acknowledged, and I think with regard to Mr. Rossiter, the fact that he's been involved with it in the past, understands our risk register was involved at the setting up point in the first review of it, would be key to having him back again. But if you've got any further comment about Councillor Reedy's concerns?
Madam Chair, I'd echo Councillor Reedy's concerns are totally correct. What's just looking, we weren't down to do an update on the risk register or anything that's moved in December, but let's see if I can give you an update on that report anyway, because it's good to have it here for December, as well as a couple of those policy reviews that we've got down. So we'll see what we can slide in over the next 2 or 3 weeks, and that way we at least can have the risk register in front of us for at least that regular review and eyes up on it to see what has or hasn't changed.
Appreciated by councillors, and then you can note this. The pump stations can be added at that point anyway, as part of that review. So there's an action there. There's an action to bring that report, the risk register, to the December meeting, and then there's an action around basically the review and then that report back in March. You right with that, Mr. Councillor Reid?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Good with that, Councillor Naylor?
Yes, thanks, Madam Chair. I'm presuming, even though we haven't got an active risk register, if there was an imminent risk that would be advised outside of the register.
Yeah, by exception of something, if something came along, then definitely anything that has in the past, in the first instance, you've notified me, and then it comes to the broader meeting.
Correct.
So I'm thinking of things that have occurred, like around perhaps the dredge or something like that. You've definitely updated us. So yes, I think we've got that reassurance all the time.
I think the reason I'd offer it up though is I actually find it is a good time for the SLT also just to download any changes and then record it and document it. So I think it's a simple idea, but you're quite right. Absolutely, anything that's a concern, we should be coming to you immediately and letting you know. Okay.
End of that discussion, so I'll put the resolution that the Risk and Audit Committee receive the action on this for information. There's a mover of that, please. Councillor Weston, seconded. Councillor Howard, all in favour? Aye. Any against? Carried unanimously, thank you. Now we're going to move on to the Risk and Audit Workplan Report, and just before I open this discussion, you probably would have noticed that there are a couple of items on the work plan for November, which haven't come into this meeting. And first of all, we're going to have just a bit of a discussion around the Westport Airport Authority financials. Douglas,
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just defer to Mrs. Brooks just to give us an update on where that audit and annual report process is at.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, so the Westport Airport Authority, we are currently awaiting an audit opinion. That audit work's been completed quite early on, and we had a delay around September. The document was due to be done in September, however, we were waiting for the taxation advice external to the council. So there's a note in the annual report of the Westport Airport that that's the case, while it wasn't adopted in time. We're just waiting on the auditors to provide that. The understanding is that this is to be monitored through RAC, and then council will need to adopt, but because we have not yet received the annual report, the audit report attached, we are proposing to send it straight through to council and to save any further delays and steps. So we're done at the next council meeting, is my expectation, to November council.
Okay, thank you for that. And so what we've had a bit of a discussion about this previous to the meeting, and I think what we'll note for next year's work plan is that step through, we're probably likely to get a draft perhaps of the Westport Airport accounts, and then as part of our monitoring requirements, and then that once it's audited, that will flow through to full council. So just for clarity, that will not come to a risk and audit meeting this time round. It will go directly to your next council meeting when it's received, and then we'll note that for next year's the work plan. The next one is a review of the business continuity plan.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So we have that document. I've had a first look through it myself. We've had a very brief discussion at the SLT, but we felt we hadn't done enough work to even send it just back to you as a draft for you to have a look at as well. So that will come to you in December. The document we've got it's good. It's quite easy to follow. It provides some standard level of what you'd expect to see to give support if we do have some sort of catastrophe where we need to use that process for us. There's a few other things we do want to add in, and you'll see that when we're adjusting that. One of the things about the particular policy is it does have a lot of information regarding contact details for contractors and staff, which I don't really think is appropriate in terms of circulating that through. So we're just trying to break it into sort of that document and then a supporting document about contact numbers and details. But it certainly gives us some start point on that. So good to see that document from my perspective. Just getting it now to you for your review at this stage. Unfortunately, just been delayed in terms of what works in front of us.
So that will, just for clarity, that will be pushed out to December, and we'll receive that at next month's meeting. And then the final one is projects and partnership report, and you'll be so used to seeing this in each monthly risk and audit committee meeting, but there has been a timing awkwardness between when projects and partnership report meet and then the minutes of those meetings and getting them through to risk and audit. And I'm going to turn over to CEO Gibbon to talk us through that at the moment and just how we're going to progress that going forward. Steve.
Thank you, Madam Chair, councillors. Look, with the PIP report, it's a really important document for us to get right on the current timing between our committee meeting, which happened on Monday, and this meeting happening today. There's just not enough time to turn that report around to give you an adequate cover report. All of the information is there, but it doesn't also give the committee a chance to deal with some of the issues in there to provide better advice back to this committee. So by taking a month pause, we get into a better cycle of reporting, and the quality of the report that we get from our team monthly going forward from December means you'll still get the same type of report and just have a better cover report over it with key risks, issues and opportunities.
Thank you, because I think what we've found as we've looked at it each month is we don't get to see or hear really what's been discussed at those meetings, and going back like 6 months or so, there was good timing in between them, and it made it very helpful to have the minutes as well, so we knew what that was discussed. So thank you for that, CEO Gibbon. And so They're the comments to start the paper with, so now I'll turn it open for discussion with any councillors. Councillor Reedy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just in regard to the reports, for me there was two components. One is the meeting that we have with central government and other interested parties. The other one is the reporting per se, which is in that report about 5 pages for each one. Now, I'm not sure whether or not we as a council are that concerned about the meeting that is in discussion with central government. What we're doing there is appraising them or updating them of progress to date. As far as the responsibility is concerned, for delivery of those projects, one is operational, two is governance. So in terms of, I'm just a little bit concerned about the need, the apparent need for us to see what's been discussed at the meetings, which for me, it's a nice to have, but it's not a must have. Okay, so I'd just like to see, we report on BAU projects, we should be reporting on, if you like, central government or externally funded CapEx in the same way.
I acknowledge what you're saying here, Councillor Reedy. From my prior experience with projects in partnership, I could answer that, but first of all, did you want to add anything further, Steve, to that?
Chair, I don't think you're going to see, like you'll see an improvement in the reporting. I think the challenge that we've got is that the PIP committee is a subcommittee, and we do want to give that chance to debate and talk about the progress and to confirm the direction of travel and to also raise issues. What we can't do because of the time is we can't then take that feedback and provide a better report back to this risk and audit committee that deals with those issues of risk and opportunity. And so you're not going to see any lack of reporting. We just needed to have one break month to get into a different reporting cycle. So you'll see the same content. It should actually end up being better information for your community.
Thank you very much for that. You're right with that, and that is absolutely, yeah. I think it will make for a better overall result. Okay, any further discussion on this? Okay, so I'll put the motion that the Risk and Audit Committee receive the Risk and Audit Work Plan for information. And has someone moved that way? Councillor Fallett, seconded. Councillor Grafton, all in favour? Aye. Anyone against?
And report, please.
Yep, thank you, Councillor Reedy. So, carried. Right, now we're going to move on to thank you, Mr. Mayor. So thank you. Now we're going to move on to agenda item number 6, which is the Information Management Project Progress Report. And thank you for this report. So we've got Francis O'Brien with us. Am I referring directly to Mr. O'Brien to speak with, or did you want to speak?
Well, Madam Chair, I think Francis has pulled together this report. It's a good chance for her to take any questions. I think the report hopefully speaks for itself. It is a type of project that will take a period longer just to implement it as we think is appropriate. The key part of this project is though deliberately going through to make sure that we're getting our ultimately our paper based records into digital, but also getting our digital structure in a format that is the most effective for either A, how we manage the council, or B, ultimately being able to make as much available online to the community for what information they seek, because that makes everyone's life far more efficient and effective, as we all know. So probably easiest just to take any questions, because I think both reports cover the key points. So we're happy with that, we'll take it that way.
Okay, so I'm taking it as read, and then I'm going to open it now for any questions or discussion. Councillor Howard.
Just a question about what spark storage actually means. Does that align in any way with like the heritage group wanting to look at archiving?
Francis, are you able to answer that?
Smart storage is something that the suppliers information leadership offer.
So it's an application, and it's used to point information from SharePoint, which is our information management system, to our on-prem network, so Drive, which it's known as. We are currently not looking at doing that. We might actually be moving everything online, so we'll have nothing on-prem, which will make everything much more efficient. You can just do links instead of using the smart storage, so that will be a much cheaper option.
Okay, I've just got a couple of questions as it relates to risk. So you've identified in this report some risk areas, and one of the major ones, if I'm reading this correctly, is around the way we store our archives and our information. So how are we capturing that? And this is probably a question too for you, Douglas, is in our risk register, because this is, reading the report, it's a major risk for that Francis has identified. So we need to make sure we capture that. And then on top of that is how is this being, and councillors may already know, but for my information, in their long-term plan, how are we capturing the resourcing and budgeting that's going to be required to get this project, finished? Because you've identified there's still a lot of work involved, especially around digitalising all the information that council has, which is obviously the safest way to keep the records going forward. So there's a couple of parts to that. Risk around the storage.
Quick comment on where you are that part of the process.
Yeah, so this is something that I care a lot about, having worked at the National Library and the Film Archive. So coming here, there's no climate control storage. We've got records in the library garage. There's a lot of paper files in lots of different areas. I just pulled a lot out from the porch in a big shed, so that's gone into the Bromhouse garage. But yeah, there's just no space. There might be a solution coming up in Shantytown, so they're looking at building an archive facility, and I've flagged that Buller District Council might be interested in that. So what they're looking at doing is they would store our files potentially, and then if we need the files, then they would scan them on demand and then send us the digital copies. So that would be ideal. I've also done work in digitisation, and it's not viable to digitise everything. You don't actually want to digitise, like you've got council minutes from 1883 and, it's in a book. You can't actually just put that through a scanner. You need to photograph every single page. So, and no one's actually going to look at most of those pages either. So the best way to do it is not digitise everything, but digitise the stuff that you need to access frequently, like the property files and the resource consents. And so yeah, I wouldn't recommend digitising everything. I would recommend getting everything into climate control storage. One of the reasons for that is that paper records last far longer than digital records. So, you think of a book that can last for 2, 3, there are paper records going back hundreds and hundreds of years. So a digital record has a lifespan of like maybe 20 years, depending how it's saved. If you think of how technology changes and software changes, you can open a file from 20 years ago and it won't open, it'll be faulty. So you actually want to preserve the physical records and not concentrate so much on the digital records. But the digital records are obviously good for accessing and sharing. So you just want to digitise the stuff that you access frequently. Does that answer?
Yeah, that gives me an understanding about it. So there is always, what you're saying is there will always be hard copies and the originals of a number of documents that we are required to store, and at the moment we're not storing them adequately.
Yes, and we're legally required to keep them and store them according to the Archives New Zealand standard, which we're not doing at the moment. So that's something we definitely need to address. And in terms of you talked about the risk register.
that is something I am looking at doing, but because I'm focusing so much on implementing SharePoint, the online system, I have very little time to focus on the digital records. I have been doing some on the side, like with the report records and disposing of a bunch of older finance records just to clear some space. But yeah, it's a time thing. It is very important.
So I think everyone will now understand the importance if they didn't already, and so that then takes me on to making sure we get this on the risk register, and also then what resources are going to be, well, so we've got a budget and we can see what's happening there, what resources have been factored in and have enough been, and this is just a note to councillors to turn your mind to for the long-term plan.
Yeah, so Madam Chair, certainly there probably would be an expectation that there'd be no more budget needed for this program, but certainly in the draft long-term plan, we've got an allowance for 40,000 every year going forward to try and just keep a steady digitising, getting that sort of work done. There is sort of like, when you're going through these projects, there is sort of like two parts. One is setting up the organisation for success digitally going forward. And secondly, and I think Mr. Rama made a really good point, is you don't digitise everything. Sometimes you look at your own files when you're going through and you realise you've actually got stuff that actually does not need under the standard to actually be saved or filed away. And sometimes you look at files that people have put away studiously over, say, the last 50 odd years, and you realise, well, there's actually stuff they've just kept, which they've just kept. So sometimes when you look at the number of records you need to digitise, actually it's nowhere near as critical or needed as it is. That aside, it is important to make sure we obviously capture the right thing. So the idea of putting the 40,000 in the draft LTP at the stage is to recognise that process. The other piece of work that Frances is very diligently working through, she's, this is her project, her key day is to make sure our records are being improved and modernised. So key thing is we are trying to focus, that time on that. The great thing, or not so great thing from my perspective, is Frances is a great resource to other people on a number of matters, so she does get dragged in different directions, but generally that is just to make our systems better and more available to people. So, and it is always surprising how many people have got these queries that come to us, for just general interest. So we also try and make sure we can achieve and deliver on those, because that's what makes history keeping it alive, is when you can keep the data rolling out. So it is that tricky balance between the parts. The other bit of work I was working with the IT team and Hayden in terms of making sure that we are modernising our digital basis as well. So we have a number of things, as you're aware of, in terms of where we now store, basically everything sits in this magic thing called the cloud. Hayden, we've gone through and put in place some disaster recovery planning with a firm based in Auckland, where we now back up all our stuff. So it's sort of dual. It's making sure we're protecting our manual records, but making sure our digital records are available to us as quickly as possible. And the one we do look at, and this is where Hayden has spent quite a bit of time getting us in the right arrangement here, is that if the Alpine fault rolls through, there'll be stuff that we actually need as an organisation to get our hands on as quickly as possible to help with how we do our response and recovery. So, as long as we can get power and a connection to the internet, then we've got a backup plan for there now too. So it is multi-layered. So some of it comes out of the budget that Frances looks after, and some of it's coming out of the budget Hayden looks out for. So it's on a couple of angles. The other thing, Hayden and Frances and I, we haven't done a lot of talking on this, but it's also, we've got four in sort of that IT space, but a couple of staff who work with Hayden. It's one of the things we're just kicking around is any way we can sort of allocate a wee bit more time to this work. We haven't landed on that as yet, but we are, we do try and explore that. So we haven't resolved that question of resource, but there's something that's on my table for the next calendar year to see what we can do. So it's just an ongoing process. And unless you've got large budget to throw at it, you do just chip it off as we are. I mean, council needs to be commended for putting money into the long-term plan to at least get to where we are. Now it's just a matter of finishing it off in a hopefully as timely manner as we can.
Thank you. Thanks, Douglas. So I'm going to open up any other discussion around this project. Councillor Nolan.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I just need a bit of clarity, because my understanding was we were moving away from paper to digital. so that we could eliminate storage costs and the practicality of storing. Now what I'm hearing is that we're not doing that anymore. Is that what we're doing? That we've got to keep paper copies as well as some digital.
So what I'm talking about with keeping the paper copies are the archives. So council minutes and records and things like that we legally have to keep. So we've kept those for a long, long time already, and we're not going to start chucking them out to make room. So what we're trying to do is make sure that things aren't are created digitally in the first place. So, and that's happening most of the time. You know, we still get some resource consents, physical resource consent files, but beyond that, everything's pretty much created digitally. So that's where the online management system comes in, is we're storing everything in there in the cloud. So there's not actually that much paper being generated, but what we do need to keep for a certain amount of years according to the disposal schedule. Some things like finance records can be disposed of after 7 years. And then, other things that aren't too important, but things like contracts, council meeting minutes and all of that kind of thing you do need to keep. But that's not specific to, particular to us, that's nationwide.
I think, so Richard, to be clear, the amount of stuff you might create on paper now that is only paper is very minimal. It's more about there is some stuff that we just need to hold in that form. Even if being a digital copy, you still just need a manual copy. But yeah, today what we might create today in the council, there'd be very few pages we'd say, we've got to keep that manual document, they're digitalised. So.
Helpful, Councillor Naylor?
Thanks.
Yep. Councillor
So
Howard?
just one thing that's brought up when you're saying that you'd expect maybe a 20-year life of digital, well, surely a lot of I can think of property files, a house life's probably 50 years plus, that is important to press those details. So is that reliance on just digital leaving us open to the information being lost? Or has to get refreshed?
And that's why we keep the physical copies. So we're scanning the property files, which is really, really important. So, for the next 20, 30 years, hopefully more, just depending on how technology changes, but we'll be able to access that online. And what we are hoping for is eventually people will be able to go onto our website and look up a property and see all of the information there. And that's the idea, like long term.
So just to clarify, somebody getting a new property now, they would have a paper copy stored as well as a digital.
Or not?
Or not.
So you make a good point though, Councillor Howard. So if in your report you say 90% of information received now by councils is digital, and so you would never have a paper copy. But if it's all digital and then it only lasts 20 years, what happens at the end of that? Or is it refreshed at some point so that those files are checked to be going forward? Because if you only ever get digital but it falls off the edge at 20 years, what have you got?
I think the way I describe it.
How do you secure that? Because that becomes a massive risk.
Correct, yeah. I think if you describe digital, remember, those of us who are old enough, remember the old 3.5-inch floppy disk, and then before that there was microfiche. And then you got these little well, some of you are as old as me too. But if you mull over the this issue of the magical cloud, so that was like probably 5 or 6 years ago. So the whole digital space in terms of they used to have a computer server sitting up on the second floor. Now we have virtual servers sitting somewhere in this magical cloud. So the whole digital space, Francis is quite right. We need to be mindful that the older type of technologies eventually they do deteriorate. But as everything gets updated and sits in that space, the new, they just move forward as technology occurs. So I think that is key to understand that risk. I mean, someone was looking for a microfiche reader because they had all these microfiche that they couldn't read. It's that type of thing that we're very alert to make sure we don't get caught with that. We've got a deteriorating product, but we actually can't get to it. Whereas at least with a good old hard copy, you can at least digitise it. But
so just to sum that up, then what you're saying is once it's made it into the cloud-based digitalisation, then it's not a drop-off at 20 years?
Well, it'll put it this way, the technology, whatever the cloud gets replaced with, God knows if there is something, but it is, Hayden's at a conference at the moment, he said that fascinating thing yesterday was this whole futures and how future IT will look. And he said the stuff that he wouldn't have a clue anyone could think about that, but it will just develop and change and new offerings. So yeah, it's not something we need to probably worry about too much today, but just highlight.
I think once it gets to the risk register, it's something that we can rope into that to make sure that that doesn't get lost, that those whole comments around potential risks, not only with regard to storage of hard copies, but storage of digitalised copies. So that does become an organisational risk. Yep.
Yeah.
So we'll make sure that I'll put it in as requested. Gina puts that as an action point for it to make it onto the risk register, so that that's not lost. But really appreciate your report and that update. Are there any other matters for discussion, Councillor Reid?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through the Chair, Francis, thank you very much for the work. What I'm about to say doesn't reflect upon yourself. I've already indicated my extreme concerns about this overall project. 2020, before the current long-term planning was developed, it was reported that the situation that we have with records is high risk, okay, and it was going to go onto the risk register. Now this is 2020. We mentioned before about the risk register being reviewed. One thing I have noticed is that when we go through the risk register, I was taken as read, and it's we don't go and we accept the risk register as it is. For me, the risk register, and this is a prime example, should be gone through line by line to ensure that everybody is aware of what the risk is, and we can then give feedback to staff if necessary. This hasn't been happening. Now we've got the situation here with information management. I've got two budgets sitting here. One that was produced through the long-term plan, which gave us 500, and unfortunately or fortunately reported in the local media. But the long-term plan is where we're at the moment. That was 2021, and we had 542,000 from memory for implementation. That was all systems work and what have you. I've asked the question before the meeting, where are we at with systems implementation? And I've been told that everything's been implemented. Okay, now we go, then we had another $2 million roughly over a 10-year period. 2 million, it's in here, please, $2 million over a 10-year period, 200,000 a year for ongoing operational work. That included, I'm assuming, the full-time person, i.e. manager, plus digitising property records. And that's all we're talking about at the moment, is digitising the property records. So someone on the line, for something that was supposed to be on the risk register, has fallen aside. Now we're talking about business as usual, and the current and the new, the proposed long-term plan, 23 to 33. Douglas is saying, oh, we're going to have about 40,000 in there, plus what's in there for Havens area. But we've already planned $200,000 a year for, and rated for, mind you, and rated for. So why now are we bringing this in again? Now, that's one point. You have to remember also that the news had two articles, one in the 24th of December, Christmas Eve, and then on the 11th of the 1st, where digital files were physically trucked across to a Christchurch firm. One for archiving, which we have to do under Public Records Act, and I haven't gone through that yet, so I don't know what's involved with that, and I rely on Francis for that. So we've got that there on an as and when required basis. Okay. Now I'm hearing from Francis though that in terms of digital records, maybe 20 years, then it could die out because of improvements and what have you. Now, when we digitise, my understanding is we're going to go, we do PDF, Adobe PDF. I can be corrected on this. Adobe PDF has been around since probably about 92, 93. Hasn't died out yet, okay? we can go in there, because once something is digitised, I know technology, once something is digitised, and we're talking about PDF files, I'm not aware of them dying out. I've got files, PDF files from 1992, 93. They don't die, okay? And technology always, when it advances, you have the ability to be able to upgrade what you've got already on file, okay? So there's two things there. One is about digitising, one is about the risk register, which is very high, and three is the fact that we seem to be operating under two budgets, and now we're going to look again at something in the 23-33 annual plan. We've already got something in here of 200,000. Here it is right here. And furthermore, it was actually that those 2 pages were actually included in the report that we received. And here is an attachment number 2. And so we've got attachment 1 was one budget of 647, and it goes right back to 2013. And now we've got another budget in the same agenda item for 542 plus $2 million ongoing over a 10-year period. I'm totally lost, and
we're looking for some clarification. So we've got a few points you've raised there. Okay, so while you've been talking, I've just asked Douglas to have a look in the risk register, because I think the information management project is listed in there. And if you could just give us a rundown on what it actually says in there. So that's the first thing around risk.
Yeah, so it is identified as item number 6 in the risk register. So I'll quickly read. Risk, description and impact. If a systematic approach to securing and accessing information is not established, including succession planning and staff retirements, then important information may be overlooked, undiscovered, or lost, leading to financial loss, lost opportunity, reputational impact, or poor service delivery or service. So it was identified as a risk category of operational services. It was given a risk consequence of 5, risk likelihood of 2, inherent risk of 10. Key controls in place were server backups, and the control plan was information management, system development and implementation, creation of standard operating procedures to support information retention. So the treatment date, was June 20, so we've obviously progressed on from there, but some of these dates are earlier. What I suggest, Madam Chair, is that Councillor Eadie's made some points there at the end, which, if they're confusing for him, they're obviously confusing for others. And what would be sensible that he and I just find some time to perhaps sit down and actually capture those items that we can then report to the risk committee when we do strategic risk next meeting, and look to just perhaps update and make them slightly fuller statements, so that those concerns can be debated by this committee and determine whether they are something that we need to raise. On the funding, last reported in March 23, I noted, on where funding was. I know you noticed, we'll probably thought 2 million. I think the 2 million, you're right, it's about the capital project spend of 647 plus the ongoing staff resource that's in there. So that's, I imagine, where that 2 million number comes from. But again, let me just go back and double check on that. And then, as part of our long-term plan, we're giving clarity about what we think we need to continue to undertake in perpetuity, in essence, anyway. So, number of action points there.
Yeah.
Councillor Reid's happy to sit down and go through that. We can just bring Francis into discussion and just bring some clarity back on the matter.
So just to sum that up then, risk register, we've got it noted in there, but we need to update the information within it and be a little bit more specific about the actual risks. Just on that risk register, Councillor Reid, you made the point that when the risk register is presented to RAC, that we don't go through it line by line, we just accept it. But that isn't quite true, because there is a report comes to it with suggested from the staff with suggested enhancements to it. But also I would expect that every councillor, and I'm sure that you all do this, as you go through it, and if you have something that specifically you want to bring to the attention of the councillors or staff, if it's in advance or at the meeting, that gets discussed. So I guess the onus is on everyone to read through that risk register and make sure they make any comments of which they might be concerned about. So I think we're well covered there, and I think the review will absolutely, as we do go through it specifically line by line. With regard to the LTP, the budgets from the start, I think it will be important, Douglas, to go right back to the start of this project and to spreadsheet it out about what were in the budgets that were approved, annual plan, long-term plan, and what's been spent on it, if we could take it right back to the beginning in that process.
And actually, we can do that. We did the work back in March 23, as I said, we've updated something in this report. We can
I think that for clarity, that provides that information.
Yeah, I just had one more point. I think one of the things about our strategic risk register, which is very thorough, the challenge has been, how do we update the register regularly with some form of commentary that stands out? So what we've done in the last probably 2 years is we've had the risk register there, which has sort of been that's our position in time, and then what we've done is we've done a commentary, and you may recall we've put in red the comments where issues have changed and come in and out, and we've tended to do it that way. I think it's fair to say we haven't found the perfect solution to having a risk register and updating it for what's changing. This is part of the work that we'll be sitting down to do and just figure out what is a better system. Because sort of the challenge is the risk register is really detailed, very helpful, but it's just making sure we manage the improvement process. And that's probably the thing we're not quite getting people confidence in writing the key things.
And what we have discussed, Douglas, is that when we go through that review, is we're going to go back to over the past year or since the last full review and make sure we capture every item that's been brought through the Risk and Audit Committee that may or may not have made it onto there, so that we've got a full body of information as the starting point. Correct. And then we'll review it line by line at that point, all our organisational risks.
Correct, but that review process will also, and I'm sure you've said this, and I'll just recap it, any new risks,
yes,
and any risks that perhaps we've dealt with and are no longer deemed to be a risk.
And so, Councillor Reddy, you've brought up some good points here, so I think we've covered off how we're going to work forward with those. You got any other comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I accept what you've said about the risk register for now. As for the budget, there's no need for me to be involved with the budget. When we look at the long-term plan, I don't need to sit down with the staff. We look at the long-term plan we had for 2021, 21-22, I believe is the, I'm getting confused with the dates, sorry, Madam Chair. We had there would have been some budgeted, some CapEx budget brought forward into the 21-22 financial year. And then, of course, we kicked in with the long-term plan, which was year one, when we hit 542. So, basically, it is the year of 21-22. You don't need me to, we don't need to go back to 2013, because all our steel variables on the balance sheet will be very concerned. The other thing, of course, is there appears to be some confusion about what is OPEX and what is CapEx. And it's quite detailed in here that the $2 million is operational on CapEx. So there just seems to be two lots of numbers floating around, and someone must have a calculation for the 542,000 that was adopted by the previous council, and also the 2 million, sorry, that was phased over a 10-year period. Someone must already have that. It must be in a spreadsheet somewhere.
It will be there, I'm sure.
So I don't need to be involved, sorry.
Okay, no, that's okay. We've got it as an action point as to that information to be pulled out again. Can we have that back to next meeting?
Madam Chair, can. I just want to have an offline discussion with Councillor Reddy, because I do think there's some stuff he can add to the conversation, which I wouldn't want to miss. So, we'll be happy to have a discussion about that.
If I may, Madam Chair, I think my name's recorded now against 3, so the third one from memory. One was financial allegations, and there was another one. So really, I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, perhaps we can have an offline discussion about that. Right, so any other discussion in this particular paper? I think it's been a good discussion. Thank you again, Francis, for putting the paper together for us. So I'll put the recommendation that the Risk and Audit Committee receive the report for information. I'll move that way. Seconder, please. Councillor Grafton, all in favour? Aye. Any against? Passed unanimously. Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to go on to agenda item number 7, which is the Buller District Council multi-year projects funding report. This is a report. This is regards to council's budgets for annual and capital expenditure, and they're prepared through the annual long-term plan, and at the end of each year there are capital budgets which are carried over. So this is basically giving us that detail around that, and I'm just going to click through to the schedule. So this provides the multi-year budgets, and I'm referring to you, Douglas, or
And then Jen, I'm going to let Mrs. Brooks just refer to key points on
if you'd like to just add anything before we open it for discussion, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, this is the sum of the total approved budgets, and it shows the work in progress, so what's been spent to date. So there's a need to carry that budget through so that the work can be completed. We haven't included any projects that are obviously complete, little budgets being underspent. We've said that's gone, it's been done with. So what this is there's active projects as at balance day, 30th of June, where there's work underway in the budget needs to continue through in order to complete those. You may spot, I think we've got one negative budget on the final line. That's because there was an overspend for 1 year, so we're actually saying that we've got this spending for the future year to mitigate that. Otherwise, we've got showing you a reflection of how much more work is expected and needed to be done and what budget remaining is required. So this is a formality that we'd like you to look through and endorse this carryover so that we can actually help create our future budgeting and understand where we sit in terms of expenditure and debt and rates decisions for the future as well. If there's specifics on, carry on here, Madam Chair. If there's specifics on projects here, I might not be able to help answer those in detail. We may need to refer back to the department, that it relates to, but we can try our best to give you the information we need today.
Okay, thank you for that. There are some, you'll notice on page 41 and page 42, there are 4 projects specifically that have been highlighted with some extra discussion around those. So I guess not concern, but just with around some of these, especially if I want to look at, say, the Brome House upgrade, to me, I'm not sure how that your councillors, and someone might be able to help me out from this not being in full council, is just around whether or not this withdrawing that particular project, which is what is suggested here, apart from some allowance for some of the work for heating and cooling and the electrical switchboard, is quite a withdrawal of quite a major project, and whether or not that recommendation from this committee can go through to full council without an open discussion about that, for which I don't think really sits within RAC. But this may be a discussion that's already been had during the annual plan process that I haven't picked up on, or during, because this is in the year that we're currently in. So perhaps Douglas, you might be able to help me out, or one of the other councillors, or...
Madam Chair, we yet to report fully on this particular project at this time. I think what we're just flagging for RAC is that as a project, it is one that will be reviewed, and whether it does continue forward, we're just putting that sort of financial question on it. I mean, without getting into the specifics, the project was set up with a brief to undertake. Significant amount of work's been done trying to figure out, well, what is the best way to for Brome House. And basically what we've sort of concluded and yet to be reported to council for decision is actually we're got a situation where we think any more spending is probably following a line of not good spending in simple terms. There's about 3 or 4 building projects the same way, and then we're just referring to the other ones there regarding wastewater, the trunk main for Westport, and the one on the, I remind myself was one among the other water supply. So from a sort of a strong finance perspective, we're identifying just some particular concerns, some specifics yet to be developed up with the council. We did have this debate amongst the finance team as, well, what do we do here? Do we flag these issues now that we know they're coming up for this report, which is where we thought it was appropriate, and we concluded, well, yes, it was. We had information that we should bring to the table, appreciating that more full information would obviously be needed for council to make their final decision. So just that trickiness between having something you need to bring as a risk, but also not quite enough to give an answer that's categorical.
So just using the Brome House one as an example, then if this particular paper was adopted by council, say the recommendation came through from Risk and Audit and it got adopted by council, then without even having that paper, councillors have already wiped it off the carry forward project. So it just seems that the timing's a little bit off there. Because if this is adopted, then that decision by default has been made. Is there any other councillor wish to comment on that? Am I picking that up incorrectly, or is that a discussion that you would want to have before taking it off the carry forward, so to speak? Councillor Howard.
I think it definitely needs to be part of the long-term plan discussion, and it needs to be part of the discussion of what we're going to put forward to the draft and what we might ask the community to provide feedback on some of these big spends. Just on that, maybe it's sort of tied in. I just couldn't quite understand what the commentary made when it came to the library review, quite strength in terms of even quite safety, which I can see, but maybe factored into Brome House upgrade or Victoria Square Works. I just kind of separate buildings, or I'm not quite understanding, that it can be tied to do that or what.
Okay, so there's a couple of questions here, and you're able to answer those.
Thank you. I just, can I refer to your first question, Madam Chair, and then refer to Councillor
Yes,
Howard?
absolutely.
Thank you. So, I think you've got a really good point about the timing and decision making around drawing a budget for the Brome House upgrade. However, this wouldn't, if this was if this was put forward to council and suggested this go through and be adopted, the idea is that this is for carryovers for a specific budget. So there's an opportunity at the point of any further papers or decisions to re-budget. So this doesn't mean the project doesn't occur. This actually says, hey, stop spending this budget that we set for this one thing. Stop. It sort of says, let's revisit this and then we do a re-budget. So we tell ourselves in-house as well, that's our discipline. When we spend the budget, stop, re-budget for what's required for future years. So that may help a little bit to help with the understanding of the timing of this, because it's a little bit chicken and egg, but that's the point there. Re-budget does come up. And to address your question, Councillor Howard, I believe there's some questions around what the future of a new civic or a new Brome House may look like, whether it would be something that looks different. I don't know. So there's just some questions around the commentary. So can you please refer again to the is it the library?
Yes, in the library.
Okay, so we are proposing to carry through. I'm just going to, yeah. Are proposing to carry through sufficient. That's the Victoria. You're talking about.
It's going to be carried forward. I just didn't understand the commentary that you.
Yeah,
just didn't seem to make sense.
I can perhaps add to that. I think one of the challenges we're looking at Westport Library is at the moment we're still waiting to end up with a final methodology for strengthening that building and therefore what the final cost might be. So it may be as part of reviewing where we sit with the Brome House upgrade, it may be that if we're saving or not spending is more correct on that project, we might be saying to the council, you need to transfer some funds from this maybe ultimately it's all borrowings anyway, and transfer it to this Westport Library project. So that's why that linkage between the two is in. I mean, it's notoriously challenging in the seismic space to actually ultimately end up with what you think is a reasonable spend of funding for buildings which have a bit of age in them. And often when you open up to your seismic work, and sort of been through a few of these over the last few years, you just find stuff that you hadn't envisaged when you went through your seismic, and until you start pulling it apart from the seismic work, then you suddenly find all the other challenges with an older building, which, you know, like will be logical. So I just want to go back and check to the original question about, well, is the resolution we have here tying someone into something that maybe we actually don't want to do? So if we just look at the recommendation, one of the things Lynn and I were just considering when was, are we just receiving this report was one option we were considering, knowing that in the past I'm pretty sure we've adopted, because we've been adopting the carry forwards process, which has given clarity to the finance team as to what's been carried forward. In this particular report, we've identified a number of projects where we're going, well, actually, there's a bit more to this, and actually, we might be marking them as a carry forward, but we also need to flag that those projects probably aren't going to proceed much further either. So maybe what we're trying to do is we're trying to get astride a couple of issues. One is work out a carry forward position, but secondly, give you more information. And perhaps that's where we just might try to cover both issues with our adoption resolution. And if that's not comfortable to the committee, then maybe we just make it be received, and then staff will work through, knowing they've got this document to refer to how they deal with the carry forward issue and then other issues that arise out of our future projected spends.
Thank you, Norman. Thank you. Councillor Howard.
Some of these things I think can go through individually. It almost needs to be workshopped as far as, you know, particularly to get by Roadhouse where it might go. I think it needs quite a bit of debate on an individual basis, more just trying to is it feasible to put that in the time frame around the voluntary planning?
So the intention is to try and report to council before Christmas. It certainly covers a variety of issues, not just related to the building. The master planning exercise that we're going through at the moment, also some might say, well, how does that link in? Well, it does, because the council's buildings take a, you know, they're a key part in how a town ultimately gets developed using public space. There's linked to that process. So there are a number of things in the go here. We're just trying to make sure we run one report which tries to cover all the issues and give the explanations of where we think it should go. And in this case, put a bit of hold on it.
So just to get this correct then, we've got a timing thing, haven't we? So we've got, this is talking about, we've got a line in the sand at June 2023. We're currently in the 2023-24 year, which is what this is all relating to. And then after that, we'll be in the long-term plan. So, personally, but I'll throw it over to councillors, I feel a little bit uncomfortable about stopping something that's been in a consulted long-term plan, and then the annual plan, which got adopted, and then cutting them now, as opposed to waiting for that discussion that happens during the long-term plan, which is the next year. There's a timing issue, but maybe I'm just reading too much into it. I'd really like some further feedback from other councillors around this. Councillor Reedy.
Madam Chair, very kindly, regarding Brown House, we're in a position here was the water to say no, this project stops. The overall capital expenditure was approved by full council. Maybe RAC has gone through it at various times and looked at that like we're doing now. But in terms of cancelling and stopping the project, that has to be through council. I agree with you entirely. The actual report that's coming through at the moment, a lot easier on the eyes than previously. I just through the chair, just want to thanks for that. In terms of what's been carried forward, I don't believe there needs to be a workshop. This is something, this is why we have meetings, so that they can be discussed, and if we have to go through line by line, so be it. But as far as it is at the moment, no, we can't accept number one, because we can't stop it, obviously. So as you recommend, it has to go to full council. But everything else for carry over, they aren't carried over. So I agree that what's in here at the moment for carry over should continue, but without the Brown House recommendation. Because I think it was about 7 million, I can't remember how being carried across now. As for some that are being, I mean, I thought the magic key, for example, had all been implemented, but it seems to me that it's still going. I believe we need to do some more work on this, but I'm comfortable. I mean, we're not incurring expenditure at the moment. All we're saying is that we're happy for these items that are currently work in progress in the balance sheet to be transferred into the current financial year. I'm happy to move that, but I'm not happy to move the ceasing or the stopping of the approved CapEx on Brown House.
If there are any other items within this that haven't been highlighted to us to stop. I just think that annual plan has been approved, just as you say, Councillor Reedy, and there is a whole other discussion as to, and I acknowledge what you're saying. Lynn is also saying that doesn't mean to say it can't be rebudgeted, but I think what it's actually saying is, well, to me it's saying stop. And I think the projects that have been highlighted for Brown House will probably still carry on, get done, the heating and cooling and that. But we can't unilaterally just say, well, let's just cut that budget. I just don't believe it can be done, and seem to have a bit of support around the table for that. I think there's quite a bit of discussion that would then roll over to the long-term plan around some of those budgets. So I think for today, I would suggest that we receive the report for information, and then I think in discussion, and that it will have to go forward to full council, but noting how councillors are of a mind with regard to it's already approved CapEx in the annual plan, and to trim it off now would be, in my mind, unacceptable, but that's me. So I think that'll be up to full councillors at a full council meeting to decide whether or not that's an appropriate measure. I'd also have one final question. I don't want to prolong it too much longer, but when the CapEx was approved in the annual plan, there would have been an impact on rates. So there would have been depreciation and probably interest for borrowings. So by now trimming this off, then how's that impact what we've been rated for? That just adds an extra layer.
It's a good question. I suppose I've just been mulling over a few of the comments kicking around. It's like part of the risk committee is to actually identify things where actually maybe that's not a sensible spend now. Sure, you don't have the decision-making ability to stop the budget. I hear that, but I suppose the effort of reporting to you is identifying these, like there are some projects we're just saying actually we need to report to council fully, but for risk purposes, and we've used this report admittedly to piggyback on and identify that risk for you. So I just want to hopefully we don't miss that point.
No, I totally acknowledge that. What I'm saying is that there's a different mechanism, and what you've said is that you've tried to roll it into one report, and I get that. But what we're saying is that there was approved a budget for this year for CapEx, you got your carry forward, the approved budget for this year, and I think that should remain. But what should occur is that the management team bring a paper, whatever that project happened to be, it wouldn't be any different than any other time of the year, and their CEO Gibbon might say, well, this Brown House one shouldn't go ahead, and here's the reason why. But it doesn't mean to say that you would have trimmed off the carry forward budget. That'd be reported against at the end of the year as to why that wasn't achieved. I think that's an absolute timing thing for me.
I think we maybe find a resolution then, which could be something along the lines of, let me go back to page 40, gone past it, and Mrs. Brooks, if you just yell at us, I think I'm getting this right. But the Risk and Audit Committee recommend to Council that the multi-years project funding schedule marked as Appendix Attachment 1 with regard to the carry forward budgets at 30 June 2023 be adopted. So we're very clear it's for the carry forward budgets, which are column 4, I think it is. Then we're not tying you into any other commentary relating to those other projects.
Yes,
Sorry,
Councillor Reedy.
Could we just, can Gina read that out, please?
I didn't even get
I'll-
it, sorry, I was
I'll
very
read that
fast.
again.
Okay,
Sorry,
yeah, no, you're quite right, just so we can digest that
Yeah.
again.
Okay, so the Risk and Audit Committee recommend to Council that the multi-year projects funding schedule marked as Attachment 1 with regard to the carry forward budgets at 30 June 2023 be adopted. And just going back to the table, we would then be referring to the column which is headed up. Where would it be? Which is Brooks, we're going to go for the column which says total unfinished projects incurred up to 30 June. Is that the?
I do believe that you're referring to column, I think your resolution is referring to column 3, which is the available budget. It was in the Brown House upgrade line.
Yes, I think you're right.
Required to complete the projects is,
Yeah, that's taking it out by that stage.
That's true. Yeah, good point. Okay, so we're going to go for the net budget available column. Is that what we want to? Because that's the net budget available at 30 June.
that actually, sorry to make this complicated, but actually, where there's no, where there's been projects delivered under budget, we've proved out the requirement in the next column zone, so we've only actually budgeted for what we believe we need. So potentially what we could do, if this is an okay resolution, that we with like tap on my backwards here. Can I make another suggestion?
Yes, please do.
That the Risk and Audit Committee recommended to the Council that the multi-year projects funding schedule marks attachment 1 as at 1 July 2023 be adopted, with one alteration being the inclusion of the full Brown House budget. It doesn't really nice, but
I agree, sorry, Madam Chair, I agree with the kind of wording.
so
What was that last bit about Brown House being, with one alteration being
reinstatement of the Brown House budget.
So I'm comfortable with that. I just want reassurance that there's no other projects being trimmed out of it. No? Okay. Because it applies to anything else that's just been put the stops on. Councillor Naylor, sorry, I can see. Do you want to wrap it up?
It all seems a bit superficial to me, but we recommend council. We're not making any decisions, why don't we just defer the whole thing to council?
So we just receive it for information and discussion.
Yeah, tell staff to sort it out for the next meeting.
Yeah, so you clearly understand where councillors have an issue with the current report.
So we do that. I think it's a wise
Yeah, it is.
comment.
Thank you.
Receive the
Councillor
report.
Naylor.
Receive the report. Now staff report forward to council on the resolution.
Yeah.
That's required for carry forwards.
Yep, knowing that from the feedback that you've received. Okay, Councillor Naylor, good suggestion. Would you like to move that way?
I'll move.
Okay, seconded Councillor Weston. Any further discussion?
What are we moving, sorry, Madam
Oh,
Chair?
sorry, we're moving that we receive the report for information and then it will go, full report will go to council with those, based on the feedback we've given with the amendments, rather than trying to tinker around with what needs to go back in. But Jean has clearly noted the feedback of councillors with regard to Brown House, because I think what we're still a little bit unsure on is are there any other smaller projects which a similar treatment may have received. Councillor
just
Hill?
a recommendation around how to budget or treat these other wastewater projects too, so recommendation whether it's going to be carried through to the 2024 annual and long-term plan, or just a recommendation about some of these carryovers, particularly when there's a significant increase in funding needed, or perhaps not a good spend. So maybe just pick out a bit more suggestions.
Is that for the year we're currently in though? Remembering we're dealing with carryover from the last financial year and the year we're currently in, which is approved budget.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the councils will have to turn their mind to whatever happens going forward for the long-term plan. So it's a separate sort of.
So some carrying forward though, there's insufficient budget to do that whole project now. So it's just, well, what's the implications for that? Is it partly done, or does it have to be part with additional funding? So where the significant budget variance is just how that's suggested to be treated.
I'm not sure that's quite fits into this, but we'll want to make sure that that information gets captured in the long-term plan discussions. I think that all projects get reviewed in order to roll into the long-term plan anyway, Councillor Howard, so. Okay. So you're comfortable, Councillor Reedy, with where we're at with this resolution, where we at the moment?
That will move that we accept the report, but
For information and defer it to full council.
yes.
Yes. So Councillor Nayman's moved that. You'll second it, Councillor Reedy. Thank you for all that discussion. Oh, sorry, Councillor Weston seconded it. So we're all okay? Nothing further? Okay, I'll put the resolution by the mover and seconder. All in favour? All right, any against? All right, thank you. And thank you for that discussion around that report. Okay, we're going to move along now to agenda item number 8, which is the Dredge Port and Dredge report, operational report to the September 2023. And I'm going to go straight to you, Douglas, for any update. I've taken it as read, but anything that you can add
I'd just
to
like to welcome Harbour Master Dominic Venz, who's just been sitting in the back of the room watching our progress. So he's the majority of this report. Council already made some good points about pilotage, which I think you all would have read, and so we just probably should have been slightly more clear about the steps. Obviously, we've got training program in place. We've got our masters on the dredge who can take the dredge in and out with pilotage, but because we're at level A, I'll let you, Dominic, go through the next bit, so I don't understand everything, but we'll just talk a bit more about that pilotage side of things.
Right, Dominic, welcome.
Yeah, so this was involved in the pilotage area, so this was over a certain size, it was 100 tonne or 3 metres deep, required by rules to have a pilot and change. You just can't come across like a small vessel again. So we've just recently been through a process with the National Regulator, Maritime New Zealand, to have our training program approved for pilots, much like our pilot exempt system that David was just speaking about for the dredge. So that allows us to train our own pilots or contract pilots in to be trained, and they're able to be bring vessels like the sands barges and any other vessels that are of that size to come through.
That's going to be a great enhancement to the operation, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a challenge, but yeah. We're working through it.
That's fantastic to hear. Douglas, anything else?
No, nothing else. I think until we've covered all the issues, the dredge has returned about 10, 12 days ago from campaign up in Nelson. It's been active last week in particular. The weather conditions turned quite a lot unfavourable in the last couple of days. It's been pulling out under its Westport contract. We are going to head back up to Nelson. We have a few more days worth around the neap time. I think I've got that right, Dominic, haven't I? Where we just need to get into some spots that at Nelson we could not complete due to what's called the spring tide period at the end of our dredge swing. So we just need to know that we'll come back and we'll tidy that up for you and do the work, but it was just too difficult to tidy up at the end of our swing. So you will see the dredge disappear for possibly a week or 10 days. Just pick up to Nelson to do that work as long as weather conditions allow us to do that in the early part of December. and then the dredge crews will finish up just before Christmas. So where we are. So, and then
Financial side of things.
financial side there on page 50. So Council already made a couple of good comments that probably would have, and I've got to say, I did sort of note those before the agenda went out, should have fixed those, so apologies for that. So on page 50, there's a line which says borrowings. The terminology would be better to say funding provided for capital, then a loan raised as part of funding, the sale of the bulk gout as part of funding. That word line called net borrowings would then be a total of funding provided for capital. Well, one of the issues is I've obviously got, this is quite a spreadsheet that encompasses a number of years. But some of your terminology, which might have been relevant in 2019, it's actually not relevant when you're suddenly up in 2023. So I need to be a little bit more tidier in that regard. So there you go. This is our financial position at September for both the dredge and the port. Just make the overarching note that the dredge will financially, we expect it to be in a positive position when it finishes up its NEMA program, probably about April. The harbour has a longer term program, of course, and we're working obviously now with people like Mineral Sands as the key one at the moment, which provides us more income for the harbour and makes that financially, it is in that closed account regime for a good number of years going into long-term plan. But that's a program that works, and hopefully, that will pay off. It obviously stops us having to fund rates put in there. And the final comment, which Councillor Reedy raised, was, well, what is the capital in the port? So when Buller, it was Westport Portland, which wasn't it, whatever gave a terminology, got wound up and transferred back to the council. The land had to be transferred through, which is where the borrowings and the capital in the port are the in and out arrangements. So that was done back in 2018. So again, it's that history thing bringing that through. So
thank you for that explanation, Douglas. Any discussion? Councillor Reedy.
Two things I may please, Madam Chair. One, to do with that capital, which we just touched on now, Douglas, through the Chair. For me, Westport Harbour, I think it's called a Buller Harbour. For me, it's only a accounting transaction. I don't believe there was. I don't understand why there would be, why a loan would have to be undertaken, because the overall the property is owned by the District Council, and they have some subsidiaries which they had 100% shareholding in. So I'm just not sure where that comes from, why there'd be a need to borrow to purchase something that you already own. The other point I make is it seems to me that we've got a net surplus deficit, 4.1 million. If I omit the, haven't discussed the capital side of it, we're actually looking at 4.1 million at the moment in the closed account. We take off depreciation, of course, which is non-monetary, and we take off the overheads, which will be a little bit of BDC, I understand. So we bring it down, maybe there's 3.5 million, I don't know, of, if you like, of cash that is going out the bank, and someone's having to fund it. Now, it's not the port because they don't have the money to fund it, they've got no revenue coming in per se. So for someone like myself reading this, the ratepayer are funding the holding costs, if you like, of this closed account. 2 points. One is the ownership of the land, and why we had purchased or borrowed, if you like, if I'm reading this correctly, to purchase land we already owned, and two, who's funding the cash, if you like, financial outlays.
Regarding the first one, Madam Chair, I'll just look to those who've been on the table a little bit longer, because I've got a feel for what they had in my work. Mr. Brooks, do you want to comment about how we closed up that company under the port? Are you familiar with anything there, or?
referring back to the time of coming out of the holdings company.
Yeah, correct, yeah. I mean, without going, I mean, none of you, because I mean, what would happen is you're winding up the assets. I suppose the question would be, Councillor Reddy, we bought the land out, cash went into a company owned by the council, what happened to that cash? There may have been obligations in that company that needed to be settled from that cash. That would be one assumption. But as the cash worked its way out over that company, the holding company, might have been the holding company, kept it for its own, for needs that the council agreed with.
I think rather than trying to answer that off the cuff, that's probably something that requires a bit of research. So that's an action.
Is it history?
Here's some history. Councillor Nayland will know the most history to do with it, because you were on the director of the board, BHL. So I think rather than try and work that out tonight,
so just probably trying to help out. Is it something we can answer? One assumes it's obviously been dealt with and it is correct.
Yes.
And I sort of don't want to go into a research program if actually we know it's fine, because that's what it would suggest it is.
I'm sure it is fine, but and I don't think it will be that hard to ascertain. Really don't.
True, it's another job.
Anyway, so we'll park that one.
Right.
Funding cash.
Yeah, it's that question when you close an account, and we're doing it for the right reasons, not having to rate for it. But Councillor Reddy's right. I think we all know this. There is still an opportunity cost of the cash that sits there, and the strategy's sort of sensible to avoid having to rate for it, but it's not sensible long term if ultimately the deficit doesn't pay for itself. So it's one of those risks the council really has to keep an eye on to make sure it doesn't get to a point where it's too large. I mean, one of the debates as part of putting the long-term plan together, which the auditors tagged, but the view would be that if the dredge long-term could become financially viable, then it financially could support what the harbour activities are. That would have some logic around that. One of the projects that we're working on at the moment for long-term plan is what is the dredge life. So as we report to you over the coming months, as the council for the long-term plan, then we'll be providing information on that. So it's a valid question. At the moment, there's no definitive answer as to what is the right way to go, but this is how a closed account works.
Sorry, Madam Chair, with all due respect, someone must be funding the financial monies, not depreciation or non-financial. Someone must be funding, even if it's a closed account. So the question was, is the ratepayer having to fund this at the moment? And from what I can see here, there's no revenue coming through from the board. I'm not arguing that, please. All I want in terms of transparency is the ratepayer funding this in the short term until it becomes profitable. And at the moment I'm seeing yes. I'd like someone to say to me, no, you're wrong.
Do you want some time, Douglas, to do?
Well, I can't defend the situation that there was a deficit there. It's in the council box. Arguably, therefore, it must be being funded by the ratepayer by lower costs of interest on deposits being earned. That is the position it is.
So that's not being accounted for within the closed account is what the question is.
Well, we've had this discussion again. Should we have a line called opportunity cost or something like that to have this effect about the interest charges? At this stage, we're not running that, but that might be one of those changes we need to do. It is an opportunity cost, but Councillor is right. Someone's funding it, well, ultimately it is the ratepayer because it's inside the council's financials.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Howard.
I can remember this being quite a debated point when we were looking at the transfer. At this stage, I think we're discussing whether it's going to be a closed account. There's quite a discussion. When you get that port operating costs, including loan interest, what does that actually apply to? Because I thought at the time, just on recall, that we were incorporating into the operating cost, even though it meant that it ended up in the deficit, but it just allowed for debt.
Well, it's picking up all the costs of the port and the interest, as you stated. the best situation, of course, is that it's all been fully funded. The answer is it's not. The long-term position, like, is we are making losses currently, because that's what they are. Long-term, are we going to make adequate profits to recover those losses? And that's what we're trying to achieve here. I can't dress it up any differently. You know, it is what it is at the moment. And that's not acceptable, but it is what it is.
Okay, Councillor Weston.
Thanks, Chair. I see with extending the life of the dredge, I know in the last council we had the red herring came through with the marpole regulations with the emissions. Will that have any bearing on extending the life of it or not?
So through mention, marpole now is not the issue. We reported that on about 6 or 8 months ago.
Yeah.
But certainly the work to date we've got more report is that yes, we can get more life out of the dredge. The hull itself's in really good nick. It's the engines, as you're aware, we have a few issues with those quite regularly. But yes, it is in a better state. But we still need contracts to make sure we can pay the bills, because we don't want to rape the dredge.
Okay, so that's been a good discussion. I think I'm going to put the motion now that we resolve that the port and dredge operations report, or let's say that we resolve that the Risk and Audit Committee received the port and dredge operation report as at September 2023 for information.
Yes.
Councillor Reedy, thank you. Seconded. Councillor Howard, all in favour? Any against? Carried unanimously, thank you. Thank you very much for coming along to the meeting, very much appreciated. Okay, now we've got the Buller Holdings Quarterly Report, so if you hop out of here and get into your resource centre, please. And it's under Risk and Audit, and it's the top one on mine anyway. Agenda item 9, let's start with that. Report from Buller Holdings. So this is the 3-month report up to the 30th of September, includes their financial and non-financial reporting. I'm taking this as read and acknowledging that it has come through as it was a placeholder, so it's slightly later item to be included in the, well, it was included in the agenda, but the information's come through a bit later than last week. So bearing that in mind, I'm going to, anything further to add, Douglas, to this before I just open it for discussion? It's pretty much as read, I think. Yep, so I'm taking it as read. Any matters for discussion? I think it's a very thorough report, so Councillor Reedy.
Chair, I did have a question, and oh, sorry, I just found it again. We'll go to page 3. Steve Graves is chair. Coastal Construction revised that they will start work. It's about the last 3rd paragraph down. Sorry, up from the bottom. Coastal Construction revised that will start work budgeted for substantial roof renovations are planned. My understanding was that the building's been re-roofed. That was something that happened during the last financial year. I just want clarification, that's all, if you cannot find it.
Yeah, I can see it. I can see what it's saying here. Substantial roof renovations. Are you saying your understanding was it was re-roofed last year?
Well, last financial year, during this year, obviously. It just rings a bell, that's all.
Yeah. I need to double check that.
We'll put the credit in.
Yeah.
I'll cut and paste and send it shortly.
Yeah.
Well,
that's
the only
okay.
priority that I'm happy to move.
You happy to move the resolution?
Yep.
Okay, just go back to the resolution. So the resolution is that the Risk and Audit Committee receives Buller Holdings Group quarterly financial report for the period ended 30 September for information, and Councillor Reedy's moved that way, and a seconder, Councillor Grafton, all in favour? Thank you. Any against? No, carried, thank you. And I'll get back to Chairman Grave to thank them for that report. And we're going to move back out of the resource centre and back into your current books. Okay, so now we're going to move, oh, sorry.
Sorry, Madam
Councillor.
Chair, I have got my buildings mixed up.
Oh, have you?
Sorry,
Okay.
I just want to, if I
You may.
may, it was EBS that was
Oh,
removed
okay.
during the year and not, I'm now looking at the,
At the,
Red Sea.
yeah,
So,
okay, so you're all good? Okay, so we'll delete that one.
What
You
about
already
the
said
email
it.
I sent? No,
My apologies, Madam Chair.
That's okay.
halfway through it.
Oh, no, that's all right, that saves you an email.
It's such a joke, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really.
Thank you, councillor Reid.
My apologies.
No,
Sorry, Madam Chair.
no problem at all. Okay, so now we're going to go on to the quarterly performance report, and this is up to the 30th of September. So we're talking about 3 months here. Neil's provided us with some good commentary around everything that's going on here, and we've got the attachments. So these are not only the financial statements, but also the non-financial performance. So I'm taking both of these as read. Anything further to add to this report? No, Madam Chair. Okay, sounds good. So any questions with regard to this? I think it's very thorough, and I just want to, if you could please pass on our thanks to Neil and to yourself, Lynn, for the full explanations provided around the financial variances. I think it's very helpful for the reader of the report. I really did appreciate that, and also for the non-financial reporting. I think it just makes it very, very thorough.
I just got a question under the non-financial, it's page 66. I just wanted to know why it's got large water supplies, Westport and Reed and achieved, but then it's marked with not met because it's got a red square against it.
Okay, let's
They
have a
just
look.
contradict each other.
Water supplies.
Page 66.
Oh, Mark, I've answered that.
Yes, you may.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the question there, Councillor Howard. The measure is that full compliance with the drinking water standards is met. And so what we're saying at the top in the commentary from our infrastructure services team is that the large supplies, being the Westport and Redton, have been achieved, but the smaller supplies haven't. So this is where you've got raw water supplied to such places such as
that's correct in that one, in the red, but down below, it's full compliance with the Protosea compliance criteria, and it's got, that only applies to the large water supplies, which are Westport and Redton, and it's got achieved beside it, but it's still marked as red.
and
It's not applicable to medium and small water supplies.
The line underneath, yeah.
What you're saying is that the expenditure should be green.
What it's should
Or
say.
not achieved.
Or not achieved.
Not achieved.
I
That's
just want
wrong.
to clarify here that those mandatory drinking water measures that are set by legislation apply to every single supply that council has. And therefore, the commentary is not very clear. We'll improve this next time in report. The large supplies have met it, the smaller ones haven't. So what the NA means is not achieved, it's not applicable.
Oh, okay.
I think I part of that information there. So that means that we've shown it as non-compliant, and this will be similar in the annual report for 23 and 24.
So that is just reworded.
Yes, because you would read that when it says non-applicable to. So you're saying it should say not achieved.
Yes.
So maybe
For medium to small water supplies.
I wonder whether to make it clear, Madam Chair, we should say, like in that right-hand column under September, we should say the overall not achieved, but we note the following four. Then you see large water achieved, but the smaller ones not achieved. So we just be a bit more clear on that.
Clearer commentary.
Well, we'll look to improve that commentary. Good question.
Any other questions on this particular report? No. So I'm going to put the motion that the Risk and Audit Committee received the quarterly report for 3 months ended 30th of September for information. I'll move that way, and Councillor Okay, full second, that's good, okay, all in favour? Thank you, any against? Carried unanimously. Thank you, so now we're going to move on to the capital receipts and expenditure report to September 2023. Okay, so this report represents an overview of the capital receipts and expenditure results compared to the annual budget to the 30th of September 2023. Anything you'd like to add, Douglas? Before taking it as read, nothing further to add. Open for discussion. Councillor Reedy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to flood page 70,
Yes.
flood recovery funding and expenditure of 90 million. I thought the funding and most of the funding come through for that. Have we not capitalised anything as yet, or for the? I mean, we've been doing work on an ongoing basis since July or July 21. 90 million. Surely we've started to capitalise.
Lynn looks like she can help us with that.
Good question, thank you. There is still quite a lot of external funding to come through because there's some substantial projects still coming through in the roading area in particular. They've only really just got kicked off, and that tranche, second road work for the February flood events was quite substantial, around the 13 million mark. There's also a lot of tranche 2, we call it, which is the NEMA funding. So in order to, this prediction, we've given a best estimate as we can at the moment. We've reviewed back to the projects and partnerships reports and looked to see if we can match up to ensure that our predictions are in line with that. But I'm happy to give you a further breakdown if that would help. I don't have that detail right to hand here, but that would help. I'm happy to provide that.
I think also, Madam Chair, just comment, one of the big projects in that flood recovery capital funding is the wharf repair at 5.9 million. It's not started yet, it won't start in the earliest, probably at February, March, so that does take quite a chunk. And then as Mrs. Rock said, there is quite a bit of the road repairs in the we call it return to service RTS project, where there is, with there'll be capital coming through that as well. There is quite a bit of that will be completed pre-Christmas, but there's also a chunk which will be more April, May before it's completed, just in terms of this time.
I suppose in a way, I'm happy with the explanation.
Yes.
It's more just when the loss sitting with the balance sheet, I know that, and I don't know if we're waiting to capitalise the asset until we won't capitalise the asset until such time that we receive the funding from NEMA, for example, or having already loan funded that money in the interim until we've incurred the expenditure. So we loan fund it, we NEMA we pay off the loan, but we've got this amount sitting in the balance sheet, work in progress. I'm just asking whether or not we're actually clearing these as the project is finished, or are we waiting for the funding or the payment from the central agencies? It's more of a senior thing, and I think Madam Chair is taking up time. But
Lynn's nodding, so I think she can assist here. So
thank you. Yes, the process that Council undertakes is that when a project's complete, it is capitalised. We don't wait for the revenue stream to be dealt with and tidied up if it's outstanding funds from NEMA or a loan to draw down. So the process is capitalised. So what we're just trying to show in this prediction is how much more has got to flow through for the full year. Is
that helpful? Yep.
Happy,
good, that's great. Thank you. So you're going to move the resolution. Sorry, Councillor Fallon.
Page 75, roading and urban development, it refers to carry over budget for the Westport Plaza revitalisation. What's the Westport Plaza?
Lynn can help here.
I actually had this question too. There's, we've had a long duration project which was initiated out of a couple of long-term plans ago. I can see Councillor Naylon nodding, maybe they help here. So it became sort of a district-wide revitalisation fund, and then there was quite some work done around the Westport precinct and Toki Bridge and River projects, and I've hopefully it's stayed amongst the commentary. We did try and update this to say that there's been a name change for the next phase of that work, which is called the Westport Plaza. And I thought we could ask the infrastructure team to give you the detail if you wanted to see what's planned in detail. We could ask on that. I don't have that detail to give you here, but
So was it
an
all
extension of that?
that connection to the river? It was all part of the trails from memory. Would that be right, Councillor Naylor? Yeah. It's just been given a fancy name now. Okay, so Councillor Reedy has, the resolution was resolved that the Risk and Audit Committee received the capital receipts and expenditure report to the 30th of September 2023 for information. Councillor Reedy, you were moving that way? Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Grafton, all in favour? Aye. Any against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, now we're up to investments and borrowings report. So this is the report as at the 30th of September, setting out all our borrowings and investments, giving us a net position. I'm taking this as read. You're all well au fait with this report, which we get every month. Anything further to add, Douglas?
No, Madam Chair.
No? Any questions, discussion? No? Yes, Councillor Reedy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Net borrowings seems to be increasing on a scale, in my view. But the whole concept initially of borrowing was to finance long-term assets, i.e. future generations. We seem to have a policy of borrowing for 2, 3, 4 years, whatever, so that we get a project across the line. And by doing that, we can we pay interest and what have you. But the whole concept, obviously we're living beyond our means. One has to borrow to maintain, if you like, or acquire short-term assets, i.e. they're not for the longer term, i.e. the future generations, as we now talk about. I just see that we're increasing on a continual basis, and ultimately it's ratepayers having to pay the interest. And somewhere on the line, I believe we have to look at actually what we are purchasing. And I know we're doing this now with the long-term plan. I appreciate that, but there is a cost to all of this. If we want to look beyond our means, then I believe we need to. I'm talking about short-term means, not long-term. We need to start addressing this. This is just going up and up. When you're on the council, Madam Chair, and also Council Naylon, we're looking at about 15, 16 million net debt. Now we're just slowly eking up, and I know we're for the current long-term plan. Current annual plan, we're looking at about 27 million. So we're another $5 million to come on top of us.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems to be never ending. And for me, we've got to decide, as I said before, I'm sorry, repeat yourself now, so I'll stop.
I think, well, I'd like to say that borrowings are directly linked to what's been approved in the annual or long-term plans, but I'll turn over to you, either Douglas or Lynn, with a comment around that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just like to note the comment about borrowing for short-term things. I think that might be a little confused or maybe not so clear. This report is showing the borrowing for capital only, this council isn't essentially doing what we say, you know, you wouldn't do at home, you wouldn't get a mortgage to pay for your groceries. We don't do the same with council borrowings, whether we go out to a bank to get those borrowings, or whether we use our own two deposits and use internal borrowings, is only for capital projects. What we've done that may help, I just could refer you to page 85 and table 6. We have actually given you a bit more detail on this report. It's an improvement on the last few months. We've shown the Westpac loan facility for the flood recovery only, and that's not long-term borrowings because NEMA is going to be funding the road. This is due to NEMA. So what you're seeing there is an escalation. It's good that refers back to Councillor Reid's earlier question about the programming works around the recovery. What you're seeing there is an escalation of those capital works being done for flood recovery, and then you draw down will wait for them to pay us. And so that's just the reflection there. So some of that debt line that you see on table 6 where it has increased, the actual main increase there is really been substantially around the flood recovery side of things.
And so the recovery of those costs, what's the time frame around those, between incurring the cost and receiving the funds back in from NEMA?
In a perfect world, it would be about a month. What happens is that we're at the mercy of NEMA to review our claims, and we've got to be quite mindful that they've got other matters have come up since our floods has been significant more violent. So the turnaround may not be as quick, and so we do have to cover that in the longer times. But generally, a claim goes in monthly, about what we've put through. And we're working really closely with them and communicating a lot with them about what their requirements are, especially through this Christmas period, to ensure that we meet everybody's needs and keep claims at the time.
And Chair, the other complicating factor that Lynn and Neil are to take into account is when we're looking at our main payment flows on the 20th of the month, is whether we've got any cash deposits we can use as part of our treasury management. And the dilemma they have to make is, do we break a term deposit, or do we go and use the Westpac short facility to get us over? So they just try and manage the cash as effective as they can. They provide me with a standard forecasting template, which we then discuss and determine to make sure it is the best approach. So we're reluctant to use the debt situation, but that is just as in general business, is you use whatever cash that you think is the most appropriate and cheapest at the time. Yeah, that matching, though, you're quite right, Councillor Reid, matching between debt and capital, that's the match. You start paying your bills, day-to-day bills, that's a really good question. What you're doing, so.
Councillor Naden, you had a question?
Yeah, just that 3.435 million, is that fully recoverable, or is there some flat back?
I would have to check for you exactly. I believe there may have been a small amount that it's a few months back, so I can't recall any much. Potentially, I might be able to recall it, though, there's a small sum that was.
Actually, there is a small amount that's still in debate with NEMA of about $70,000 to $80,000. I think, like, one would like to think that amount of borrowing is no more than, say, around that $1 million to $2 million mark. It's certainly got a bit higher in September as the recovery program is where it is in terms of volume. So it really does determine on what we've spent in that previous month. The key thing will be to look out at June 24 and understand exactly what's still to be recovered, and the one project that will sit there will definitely be the wharf. And then the balance, the next key thing will be, well, once the wharf's done, everything else is done, how much is still sitting in that flood recovery debt? In theory, it should be nothing because we've then utilised it. But then we'll be into another debt discussion about how we go, because you're either fund for your bills through debt, because it's generational, or it's income. And it's that squeezy bit.
If I may just reassure, I just looked at that debt today, that was just 555k. So we're definitely watching, it's a daily activity to try and mitigate the interest costs here, because that's one thing I need to be super clear with you about, is that the interest costs that are borne upon that facility, NEMA will not fund that. So that is something we made a provision in the last annual plan And we're really mindful because the interest rate's around 7. So that's, you know, we don't want to leave anything there as well, so we're really careful with that.
Okay, appreciate that explanation, because actually when you look along the top line, the loan facility, that hasn't altered, has it, in those 3 months since June, so the increase is around the flood recovery at that period anyway. Councillor Howard.
I just want to just double check on page 82 that that summary of investments that has actually no change since June to the end of September. Yeah.
Excuse me, everyone.
Yeah, I think I just want to highlight table 3 there. One, it's a question that the Chief Executive also had of me too. And one of the issues with when we earn interest on our term deposits, we actually, as a term deposit matures, we take the interest and put it back into our current account, because that's part of our funding matrix. So you generally won't see, unless we've got spare money on term deposits, those numbers won't change. You don't accrue the interest in. That's the way we do it.
Councillor Reedy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just going back to what I was talking about before. I wasn't referring to mortgage accounts and groceries. What we're talking about is, and I consider there is a policy where we see we want borrow for operational costs. So I take it on board. The question I was making was that we have a choice, and we have a choice. We've got long-term assets that suit intergenerational, i.e. the whole concept of intergenerational equity. We also have we purchase short-term, we purchase assets which are of a short-term duration. I can't say what they are at the moment, so I can come briefly. But what I'm making is that there seems to be an acceptance that we borrow for everything we want, living beyond our means. So we've got the short-term assets, if you like, and we've got the longer-term intergenerational assets. What I'm saying is that it seems to be back to the late 70s borrow and hope. As far as what I'm seeing here is that we are potentially living beyond our means, capital-wise, and whether or not that's the long-term, which I'm happy with, or the short-term assets, which might only have a life of say 5 or 6 years, I don't know. But the question is do we carry on undertaking those purchases? As I said before, that'll be part and parcel of the long-term plan.
I was just going to say that,
yes,
so that is the appropriate time to discuss those
yes.
that annual plan and long-term plan discussions, just around what is the CapEx budget and how that is funded. So I'm sure that you'll be mindful of that when that comes along. So we have a recommendation here that the Risk and Audit Committee receive the Investments and Borrowings Report as at the 30th of September for information. To have someone move that way. Councillor Reedy seconded. Councillor Grafton, all in favour? Aye. Any against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to move into public excluded. We have one matter of public excluded, and that's confirmation of public excluded minutes. So we have a recommendation here that the public be excluded from the following parts of the proceedings of the meeting, and I'm going to move that way. Could I have a seconder? Councillor Reedy, all in favour? Aye. Any against? Carried. Thank you to anyone that's joined online. Thank you to Alan. Good afternoon for you.